the gang violence and the beef with the boys in school got so bad to the point where everybody used to have to wait till after school. Everybody knew who get on which bus, which schools get on this bus, what route they take, what stop they get off at. It was becoming really bad, y'all. It became unsafe. Hello you all, welcome to my channel. If you are a returning subscriber, what's good? If you are new, hey boo, I am back with another video. And so we are just gonna hop straight into it. Y'all see the title, okay? I really did not know what I was gonna record today, but judging from y'all kind of ran the views up a little bit on that video while I talked about why I left Chicago. And so I don't know why this topic is set on my spirit, but I feel like some of y'all ready to leave the hood, okay? And so that's why y'all watch that video. That's just what I'm gonna conclude. That's what I'm gonna guess, that y'all watch that video because either y'all live in Chicago, or either ever wanted to visit Chicago, or you ever wondered about Chicago. But it's time to leave the hood, okay? Y'all see the title. If you are thinking about leaving the hood, this is your message right here, okay? To be quite honest, I told y'all in the last video that it's been a while since I visited Chicago. And so the last time I went to visit there, I will say it seems as though nothing has really changed. It's a few minor changes in the city, but everything still looks the same. Everything is pretty much the same. So it's almost as if you haven't really missed anything. That's basically what I got from last time I went to go visit there. But before we get into the message of why it's time for you to leave the hood, and that's why I really made this video, okay? This is a message. I'm gonna let the Lord lead me through this message and let y'all be able to take whatever y'all can take from this message and apply it, okay? So basically, I'm just gonna kind of leave off on the last video. I kind of touched that video and I told y'all that I was gonna tell y'all what it was like kind of growing up in the city. The first video, I just kind of basically talked about why I left. I did kind of touch a little bit on what it was like growing up there, but I'm talking about, like, you know, going to school and stuff like that. The one thing I could say about leaving Chicago and why I feel like it was the best decision for me, my grandmother passed away, so I had no other choice but to come live here, you know? And so the one thing I could say about the city, going to school there, it has always been rough. If y'all new to my channel, I kind of stated that the school system is poor in Chicago. I felt like we didn't get the best education, you know what I'm saying? And so moving here to Wisconsin and just starting off school, I really did. When I say I literally felt like a fish out of the water, I did. It was a lot of things that I was learning here that I didn't learn there. I told y'all about the creepy school counselor, how he tried to come on to me. And so that kind of just made me not as motivated to learn, I would say, because when I first started going to high school there, that's when it happened, you know, and my grades started to suffer behind that. I was just stressing. You know how you start high school, you transitioning into basically young adulthood, and so you have more responsibilities, and so it was a lot on me. I was dealing with a lot. I was stressing. I was still trying to come into my own woman. I was still going through that phase of being shy, introverted, trying to make friends, you know, break up out of my shyness and stuff like that. And so it was really like a lot for me. But just growing up in the school system in Chicago is completely different. Just like the last video where I told y'all about that hood mentality, that was kind of like how it was going to school in Chicago as well. Personally, I don't know. I feel like everybody that has went to school in Chicago, just kind of experiencing that whole kind of lifestyle, the hood mentality, it kind of trickled over into the educational system in Chicago as well. I feel like all of us that has came from the city can attest to this and say that we was forced to grow up really fast because of the certain conditions that we were in. And so going to school every day was a struggle. Coming home from school every day was a struggle. All of it really started in high school. That whole lifestyle I told you about in the first video, where it was just like a lot of things I experienced and not seen where it did kind of traumatize me just a little bit. Like anybody that has grown up in the city can say that they probably have been traumatized a little bit just from living there, just from all the things that you witness on a day-to-day basis. You just basically innocent bystander to life in Chicago, just the ins and the outs. You see other people's struggles. Going into high school, it was just like almost, I felt as if I was just thrown out there in the world. You out for yourself, basically. You forced to grow up early. And so just going to high school, that was the struggle as well. It was a couple of buses that we used to have to take to school every morning. I never forget this. We had to take public transportation, better known as CTA in Chicago, okay, Chicago Transit Authority. And so when I first started out taking a bus there, I don't know if y'all know about the Ashland bus, but I started out taking the Ashland bus all the way. I don't want to give it away too much where I stay out because the house where I stay, somebody else live there now. So I don't want to kind of put their address out there like that. But I used to take the Ashland bus all the way to 63rd and Ashland because our school was on 63rd. And it was just every day, like every morning, I would say it was pretty smooth sailing in the morning, but just the certain things that I would encounter, like going to school every morning, seeing a whole bunch of drug addicts off the 63rd Street strip over there on Ashland, just kind of hanging around by the, you know, the train station and stuff like that. It was this one particular store where me and my friends used to always go to after school because it was at 6. If y'all know what Ashland is, y'all know what 63rd is, y'all know what I'm talking about. That's a little store right there. It ain't right there now because the last time I went to go visit, y'all know that McDonald's is right off of 63rd and Ashland. I was looking for that store and I think they tore it down. You know, I don't know, but it ain't right there no more. But we used to stand outside of this little corner store and wait for the 63rd bus. I lived around 79th in Ashland, okay, I'm gonna just say that. But we was basically waiting on 63rd for our bus to go back that way. But it was always so much going on right there. People selling stuff, DVDs, loose squares, you know. If you know, then you know. But we was just seeing a lot. The one thing I could say I could never forget about growing up in Chicago, going to school, when we would get to school, and I really didn't, to be quite honest, you never really know the seriousness of your situation until you get out of it. When me coming here to Wisconsin, going to school here, it made me realize like a lot that I was missing out on as far as a better life, better education and stuff like that. Because like I said, the school was a support system, and every morning we used to have to go into school. We used to have to walk through metal detectors. That's one thing I could say I would never forget. Just walking through the metal detectors every day, feeling like you was a prisoner. We walking through metal detectors just to go to school. It was a lot that was going on back then. The boys that was in our school, they was into it with other boys from different high schools. The gang activity and stuff like that trickled over into the educational system, and some of the boys was kind of like just, they had to protect themselves. The school system had to protect the student body, you know, and so they had the metal detectors, and I had to sit back and think about that thing. I was just like, you do got some schools where they got metal detectors, but in Chicago, at almost every school, it was a metal detector. And I just always remember how you would feel going through the metal detector every morning. Just like being at the airport, going through security check just to go to class. It was that serious, but like I said, it was Chicago lifestyle kind of trickled over into everything else, and there was always a lot going on. Yeah, of course it was always a lot of fights, but the one thing I can say that I remember is a lot of the fights would take place either on lunch period or after school, okay, because nobody was trying to get in trouble on the school premises. So whoever had beef, they'll meet up outside the school grounds. I never forget that. I remember this one particular time, y'all. I've seen so many fights living in Chicago, going to school there and stuff like that, where I done seen some crazy stuff, y'all. I remember one particular fight. It was on our lunch period. Or I'm trying to remember, was it after school or on our lunch period? It was one of them, y'all. Okay, so basically our school was on a busy street, And so a lot of us would just walk together on our lunch period, because literally the restaurants was nearby our school, so we didn't really have to drive or get on the bus, but we used to just kind of walk in groups and stuff like that. But I remember this one particular fight. Two girls got in a fight and they was in the street at one point, and I never forget hearing a bottle upside somebody's head and hearing the glass hit the ground, seeing all the blood splatter. And it was a nasty scene, y'all. The Chicago lifestyle, that gutter kind of mentality, you can tell that it was affecting the children as well. Like, just us coming up as teenagers, growing up, it was literally like something to where I witnessed where some of the kids weren't able to really get away from it. But I just seen certain beefs where things just got bloody, literally. And that fight got so bad, y'all, the entire school was walking down this block because the girl that had got hit in her head with a bottle, she was following after the girl that she had the fight with. And so we literally walking down, I'll never forget, we literally walking down, I think it was 67th Street. I'm not sure. I think it was 67th Street. And it was crazy. Like, them times was crazy, y'all. Just seeing all the fights, and the worst ones was with the boys, y'all.
And I don't know how I just sat up here and told this story and left a huge chunk out, but another thing I could say I remember is I was dating this boy in high school. You know, he was a football quarterback, but he was a little rough around the edges too. He was a hood boy, and so he was sustaining a lot of the beefs too. And so that's another thing I could say I remember was that he lived on the east side of Chicago. And so if y'all know, the south side of Chicago got some of the roughest areas as far as gang violence, but the east side is notorious for gang violence as well. And my boyfriend at the time, he was caught up in that lifestyle. You know, I was able to see that in school and outside. It was just like, I remember he used to walk me to the bus stop every day after school, and some of the times he would take the bus with me and I would see where he would get off at. And he showed me a different side of life, to be quite honest. I forgot to tell y'all, but when I was in grammar school, your girl used to be getting the boys, okay? Even though I was shy, I was just always attracting the boys. But when I was in grammar school, I remember, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, because the type of dudes that I used to date. But when I was in grammar school, I used to date the captain of the basketball team. And let me just put it out here, your girl was not no little Tatiana in grammar school or high school. I wasn't wild out here like that. The difference between them two was, I was just about to say his name, the person that I was dating in grammar school, he was more clean cut. You know, he was a church boy. He was a good boy all around. He wasn't no hood boy. But once I got to high school, I started dating the hood boy. And the one thing I could say I could remember about him is that although he was a hood boy, he was a gentleman. He never disrespected me, not one time. He was just that hood boy. He was, I'll never forget him. But he was the one that actually taught me how to walk on the opposite side of the street, okay? And he told me the meaning behind it. He was like, I'm supposed to protect you. But he was literally just that street hood boy. Even though he was into his sports and he really loved his football, but he was the one thing I could say about him, I almost said his name, y'all, but he was a good kid inside of school. He always made sure he got his work done. Okay, he ain't play about that. His grades was always top tier. He was always good inside of school, but after school, he was a straight up hood boy. Okay, and I was able to witness that when we was together.
I think I'm gonna put a trigger warning on this video, but I'm not gonna really be saying anything that's too graphic. But I had a best friend at the time, so we used to take the 63rd Street bus to school every day, and then after school, some of the times we would take the 63rd bus, and then sometimes we would take the 79th Street bus, because like I told you, I live right off 79th. But our school was all the way out. Okay, so I lived on the south side of Chicago, but our school was on the east side okay? And so we had to take the bus all the way from the east side of Chicago all the way back to the south. And so we've taken the 79th Street bus. For the ones that know about the 79th Street bus, you know that it ain't no joke. Getting on the 79th Street bus, you're gonna see something. You're gonna see some sort of craziness taking the 79th Street bus. But the one thing I can say I remember vividly, going to school, the gang violence and the beef with the boys in school got so bad to the point where, like I said, everybody used to have to wait till after school. Everybody knew who get on which bus, which schools get on this bus, what route they take, what stop they get off at. It was becoming really bad, y'all. It became unsafe, okay? Because some of the boys had beef with other boys from other high schools and stuff like that. And I never forget, y'all, this stuff was so sad. One of my best friends, she had a brother, and she called me and she said, remember the last video where I talked about a lot of the kids was getting jacked for their Air Force Ones and their Jordans and stuff like that? But really, not only was that type of stuff happening, but it was a lot of times to where the boys would catch whoever they was looking for on the 79th Street bus, and my best friend brother happened to be one of the boys. I never forget this, and I don't know if this particular person watched my videos, but this stuff was so sad. Her brother got jumped so bad to the point where they put him in the hospital. They jumped him so bad. It was him, and it was so crazy because I wasn't there to witness it, but she had called me, and I just remember how emotional she was. I looked at her brother like he was family too. Me and her had been friends since grammar school. And so she called and told me what happened. I was just like, wow. They put him in a hospital. And then I was just thinking back on it. She was just telling me about how nobody helped him. He was always hanging with a whole bunch of boys, you know, and they kind of let him get jumped on. And I remember one particular girl I used to hang with back then too, where me and her was real cool, but she had ended up getting sliced up by some girls, and she had ended up going to the hospital behind it. It's like I told y'all, like Chicago lifestyle, certain things you just literally can't avoid. It's just almost as if you always got to be constantly in a state of survival, like always looking over your shoulder, always got to be ready to protect yourself, like anything could go down at any second. But just the whole jumping on the bus, jumping on boys, like her brother wasn't the only person that had got jumped on. It's plenty of times where I have been on the bus and we on our way going home. These boys was so ruthless to the point where they would turn the bus off. Like literally, we could be sitting at a red light off 79th Street. It would always happen whenever we got to, this would mostly happen on the 63rd Street bus, where the boys would always turn the bus off whenever we got to that red light off King Drive. And if y'all know, then y'all know. If y'all went to school with me, then y'all know how it was back then, taking the CTA home from school. But they used to turn the bus off and just jump on the bus and jump on the boys, like just literally turn the bus off so we couldn't go nowhere. Even some of the bus drivers was afraid of them. It was so crazy, y'all. It was a couple of times to where me and my friends, we used to have to take, because you know, if y'all know, on 63rd, it's a train station right there. So we could just take the train home. But they used to always turn the bus off. Whenever we would get to King Drive, they'd turn the bus off. Then we'd have to get off and take the train home. But that stuff was happening a lot. Literally, it would happen like almost every day after school because the boys had beef with other boys from different high schools. These boys always knew. It was no different than, like I said in the last video, the Chicago lifestyle, the gun violence, stuff like that. If somebody got beef with you, they gonna watch you. They know where you gonna be at. They know where to get you at, okay? And so that's basically what happened. And yeah, I was just thinking back to my best friend brother, and they put him in the hospital. And I was just thinking about my other friend that she had ended up getting put in the hospital. It was just like, just that entire lifestyle is something that traumatized me. You know, this is things that I will never forget. But just the whole Chicago lifestyle and going to school there. Just think everything that I just told y'all about. Who got time to focus on school? Okay, we literally tried our best to get our grades up and stuff like that. Whatever was going on in your personal life outside of school, it was almost as if you couldn't avoid it. You know what I'm saying? And so I was a witness to that, and just being a bystander, seeing that type of stuff every day, that literally do something to your mental. Like anybody that has grown up in Chicago, I literally, when I said that whole thing, if you live in Chicago, you deserve compensation for pain and suffering, like that stuff is literally real. Anybody that come from Chicago can attest and say that you have probably experienced some sort of mental damage growing up in a city like that, especially if you grew up from there. You was born there, born and raised, okay? But yeah, that's just literally how it was. And when my grandmother ended up passing away, I had got to a point to where, you know, y'all know how we used to be in high school trying to act like we grown. So I was slacking off in school a lot, y'all. I was ditching a lot of my classes and just trying to be grown. And my grandmother, she had been strict my entire life. You know, she wanted me to go to church every day and church 7 days a week. And once I got to high school, that stuff was out. It's like, ain't no telling me what I can and can't do. But after my grandmother passed away, it was like everything was downhill from there. She ended up passing away like halfway through my high school semester. And I just remember after that, I just wasn't really feeling as motivated to go to school because I was trying to process her death. And when my grandmother passed away, my mother's drug addiction got worse. My mother went through her periods to where she stopped doing drugs, then she'll relapse. Stopped doing drugs, then she'll relapse. After my grandmother passed away, of course she relapsed, you know. And so that was the struggle that I was going through then. School was not my focus. I had a mother that was battling with drug addiction. Then my grandmother passed away. All type of stuff I told y'all about what was going on in high school. It was just like school just was not my main focus. And the Chicago lifestyle ain't do nothing but make that worse. But I just remember, I never forget this. And I said that it be so crazy because when I come and make these videos, like I be wanting to go one direction with this message, but stuff just be coming back to me, like so many memories. I be reminiscing. But I remember one particular time, my mother's drug addiction almost costed me my life. This was a little while after my grandmother had passed away. I told you I grew up in a beautiful home. And so actually this is how I had ended up going to go stay with my auntie, because I ain't had nobody else to take care of me. But I was so comfortable with being at home to the point where I would be at home alone a lot. But during this time, like I said, my mother was dealing with a lot. My mother was the only child. And so when my grandmother passed away, she started back doing drugs again. I took notice of that. And I was struggling with my schooling. And to top that off, my grandmother used to always give me money to buy bus passes for school. So back then we used to get a 30 pack of CTA bus passes. I never forget, they was orange and they came in a little clear package. You buy them at the currency exchange on 79th Street. But she used to give me like $20 or $30 for my school bus passes. And she'd give me a little extra money for school lunch and stuff like that. But I remember one particular time, I never forget, y'all. My sister had got me my first Coach purse. It was black. And this is where I used to keep my bus pass and my money in. Telling y'all, my mother was battling with a drug addiction, and so she was going through it. And it was a lot of times to where I would be home alone. My mother would be there very rarely, like she was out there. I just didn't feel motivated to go to school. My mother stole my money that I was supposed to use to get my school bus passes to go get high, okay? And I knew she took it. I didn't really take it too personal, you know. I knew that she was going through a lot then, but I was just thinking like, Mom, why would you steal my money? I never forget one particular day, y'all. Like, this was literally right after my grandmother had passed away. My grandmother was putting the house up for sale, and my mother left. This was a routine of her leaving. Like, I had got to a point in my life to where I was used to her leaving. It was a lot of times to where when she said she was leaving, I knew I probably wouldn't see her until like later on that day or the next day. And this one particular day, She told me she was about to go somewhere. And I'm like, okay, you know. And literally right after she left, y'all, like, I never forget, this was the most scariest experience I ever had. Everything was just coming in at me. After losing my grandmother, I had always felt like my grandmother was trying to keep me away from my mother. But it was just like after my grandmother passed away, I kind of started to see why my grandmother didn't want me being around my mother as much, because, you know, because of her drug addiction. But I started seeing why my grandmother ended up being my caretaker, and my mother wasn't a suitable person to take care of me. And I just started noticing it after my grandmother passed away. It was a lot of times where she just kind of left me at home by myself. But I was 16 then, so it was just like I wasn't really alone. Like, I ain't need nobody to change my diaper or nothing for me. But still, you know, she wasn't really as present. But she had left this one particular day. It was I didn't realize that she took the money until like later on that day, because I'm literally sitting up thinking, okay, I'm finna go to school tomorrow. I'm checking my purse, you know. No, matter of fact, what I was about to do was, after she left, I was gonna go and get my bus passes to go to school the next day. And then I noticed that the money was missing. I'm like, the insult to injury, somebody had ended up coming to the door. True story, y'all. This was the most scariest experience. This was one of my most naive moments. This was me, young, naive, lacking all type of spiritual awareness, okay, then. But somebody had came and rung the doorbell. Now, remember, I told y'all that the house was up for sale. Everything was basically had been emptied out, in a sense. We were still getting rid of things, but a lot of people would come over because they wanted to view the house, okay? And so when somebody had came to the door, I'm thinking it's somebody that want to come see the house. And this person was asking for my mother. You know, mind you, remember I told y'all my mother, it was a couple of times where she had company over. This man came over looking for her, and I told young naive me, I was like, oh, she left a little while ago. Oh, but you could wait for her. She said she coming back. Because me sitting up thinking, even though I told y'all that whenever my mother would leave, I kind of already knew that she wouldn't come back. But part of me was always wishing that she would come back, you know. So I'm just so anxious. My little girl self coming up at me like, oh, she said she coming back though. And the man was looking at me like, I told this man that he could wait there for her. And y'all already know what this story is going. So I let the man come in. This was the most dumbest moves I could have ever made, y'all. But he was a drug addict, y'all. And I was foolish enough to let him come in. But I remember letting him in. At first I was in the kitchen, and then I was in the living room. I steady keep on going and looking out the front window for my mother, because I just told this man she'll be right back. That's what she told me, you know. And so 30 minutes go back, an hour go back, and that's when my instincts starting to kick in, let me know you are in danger. You just let a stranger in his house, a drug addict at that. It's all type of valuables and nice things. Like I said, my grandmother, she had a beautiful home, and she had a lot of valuable things in her home. And I just let this stranger in. It didn't hit me until he had been there for too long, you know. I started getting afraid. I kept going to the front window. I kept going to the front door, looking out for her. And this man, see that is a golden opportunity. He like, oh, she here alone. This man was walking all through our house. You know how somebody be trying to case a house out, like trying to check and see what it is that this is exactly what this man was doing. This man was walking through every room in the house. Once the time started going back, and I'm like, you know, my mom, she ain't coming right back, 'cause that's what she told me. But this man been here for a nice little minute. Now, literally, I knew this man didn't have good intentions because he stayed. He didn't think, oh, well, she ain't coming, well, I'm finna just leave. He thought, it was almost as if my spiritual discernment kicked in so fast. It was almost as if the Lord spoke to me and said, you are in danger. Pay attention. This man was walking all around the house. Like, it was almost as if he didn't care that I was even there. He was trying to see what it was he could steal. And I was so afraid, y'all. I kept going to the living room, looking out the window. Just, when I say I was in danger, I literally was. Like, this man knew that I was there by myself. You know what I'm saying? And so, I think around this time, it was a for sale sign in front of our yard, but I was so afraid, y'all. I knew my mother was not coming back until like either later on midnight, like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning till the next morning. That was literally her routine. I'm like, man, I just don't let this man up in here. This man had dangerous intentions for me. I can tell. I could literally feel it. He kept walking back and forth in the house, walking around the house. It was just almost as if I was in a frozen state. I didn't know what to do. Like, I'm just sitting up here thinking, how am I gonna get this man out my house? He already know that I'm here by myself. And a savior came right in the nick of time. It was my foster sister. She had came over just out of nowhere, y'all. It was almost as if the Lord sent her to the house because he knew that I was in danger. It was plenty of days where I was just there by myself. I kind of just used to being by myself, but this one particular day, I was not safe. And he sent her, and she had came with somebody else. I knew this man had dangerous intentions for me. And the reason why I knew this is because the minute my sister came and rung that doorbell, I forgot to add this part in here, y'all. When she had came and rung the doorbell, he got real startled. Whatever plans he had for me, he wasn't expecting for nobody to show up. For some strange reason, I felt like this man knew that my mother wasn't gonna show up. So he had more than enough time to do whatever he was trying to do. I answered the door and I told her, she asked me where my mother was. I told her that she left. She said she was gonna come back. And I told her that it was somebody here that was waiting for her. And she was like, why would you let him in here? And I was so afraid. I was like, she won't leave. The minute I'm telling, this is how I knew this man had dangerous intentions for me. I was so thankful. This man could have assaulted me. This man could have did anything to me. But because like I said, he was there for a nice minute. The minute my sister showed up and rung that doorbell, that man flew up out of there. He left so quick. If my sister would have never showed up, I probably would not be here talking to y'all right now. Okay? That man had dangerous intentions for me. But he could have been left. That man was literally there for like almost an hour with me. He left so quick. There wasn't nothing but the Lord. It was nothing but the Lord. And this is another thing too I want to add. This situation with the man just showed me how sheltered I was. Remember I told y'all my grandmother was strict. She barely would ever let me do anything. So just by me being kind of sheltered, I was lacking street smarts as well. And so that's another thing I wanted to kind of put in here. Back growing up in Chicago, you know, the whole not feeling accustomed, not really feeling like I fit in with the environment. But my instincts kicked in right away and let me know that I was in danger. But that was another part to why I said leaving that entire lifestyle behind. And my mother had ended up coming back later on that night, and I had told her, I was like, somebody had came here for you. I was so upset and angry with my mother. I was like, I thought you told me you was coming back and somebody came here, something almost happened to me. My mother, she felt so guilty. I never seen my mother look so disappointed before. She looked so disappointed. It was just almost as if she felt like, dang, I failed my daughter once again and something could have happened to her. But by the grace of God, I was protected, you know. But I was like, Mama. Then I questioned her about the money. She was honest with me about it. I said, Mama, why would you take my money? I need that for school. I had to get bus pads. And she was just like, I'm sorry, I took it. She was honest with me about it. And she was like, I will never leave you again. And from that day forward, and my mother was there, she never left. She never stayed out late and none of that. She was like literally by my side. But that was just one part. It's just, you know, from living in Chicago, that hood mentality, that hood lifestyle. Her lifestyle trickled over into my life. This was something that my grandmother tried to protect me and shelter me from, you know? And just to see how her poor parenting skills trickled over into my life, which is so eye-opening to me. It was something that I never forget. But everything I just explained to y'all in this video, like if you grew up in the city, you grew up in the hood, you probably always dealt with situations like this. Is similar to man, just feeling like you always gotta protect yourself. You feel like you ain't got nobody really. You forced to be a child and an adult at the same time. Like you can't really be a child and live your life and enjoy yourself because you got too many things and adult responsibilities to handle at your young age. And it was just something about the hood lifestyle that I just never forget, y'all. I was so upset with my mother that she stole my money. Then I couldn't go to school because she sold the money. She was like, I just take you to school, I drive you to school, because my grandmother had ended up leaving my mother her car. And so she was taking me to school a lot, but I was so ready to get up out of Chicago. I did not want to live there no more after that. Like after my grandmother passed away, I was just ready to go. My mother's drug addiction started to take effect in my life in so many different ways. That entire hood mentality, ghetto lifestyle, she was bringing it into my life. And that was just something that I just was not accustomed to. And I just wanted to get away from it. But just with all that being said, if you listen to this video and you want to leave the hood, I just feel like whoever is listening to this video, you feel like you're ready to leave the hood. You might have been in the hood your entire life, but I know that the ones that's come to listen to my video, you want to change in your life. You want something different. You want a different environment. You tired of feeling like you gotta always protect yourself. You tired of feeling like you're not really getting nothing accomplished. You tired of getting your things taken from you. Just depending on who was ever watching this video.